live. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today for the What's on Sports podcast. Let me introduce myself. My name is John Tedora, and I'll be your host today. They call me the Sports Trader because I trade sports just like other people trade stocks. And as part of an amazing deal, I've just signed on to be part of the What's on Sports family and the $2 Sports Club family. And we'll tell you all about that a little bit later on. With me today is our main man. That's right. They call him the sports nerd. Lance Fernandez is in the house. Lance, how are you, buddy?
I'm pumped up today, John. Even though football season is over, there's just a lot of topics that we can talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton, buddy. I mean, like absolutely a ton. And we are going to go into a bunch of news today. We're going to cover the late great Marty Schottenheimer. We're going to talk about a Super Bowl bet that went wrong, completely wrong. We're going to cover whether or not the Bucs and Tom Brady can do it again. We're going to talk about what the Chiefs need to actually fix their team so they can come back and make another run at this. Russell Wilson is in the news today, and we've got a lot of other things to be covering. But before we go any further, we do have some breaking news that just came in right before the podcast started. Breaking news in the world of sports, and I'm going to throw it over to you, Lance. What's going on today?
Okay, the biggest news so far, just minutes ago, actually, J.J. Watt and the Houston Texans mutually agreed to part ways. So after 10 seasons of playing for the Houston Texans and winning 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, of course, J.J. Watt is finally leaving the Texans camp. Major news, John. Major news.
Major news. Now, you said you had 2 breaking stories. Can we hear both of them?
Okay, so the second one, so if J.J. Watt is finally finding a new home, so the second news is about twin brothers. So one of them is your guy, Pittsburgh Steelers center Marquise Pouncey, and his brother Mike. Unfortunately, John, they will be hanging up their sneakers. They won't play in 2021 anymore. So between them,
together.
Yes, retiring together, and they have 13 Pro Bowls in between the two of them. Now, we remember, John, that Pouncey and Ben Roethlisberger had a banter wherein if one of them retires, one of them will likely follow. So is this a trend wherein Big Ben will finally follow suit or follow Pouncey into retirement?
Wow. Well, let's talk about how both of those things impact both teams. I guess since you started talking about the Steelers, and that's my favorite team, I guess we could jump into them first. Yeah, for years, Ben Roethlisberger had always said he'll play as long as Marquise Pouncey plays. And now that Pouncey is officially done, I mean, that's huge news. Now, will Big Ben keep his word? He is a huge cap hit for the Steelers moving forward. I think there's going to be some renegotiation as to how much they can actually afford to pay him. Even if he leaves, I believe he's a $21 or $22 million cap hit that we're talking about Ben. And I believe Pouncey is going to be like a $7 or $8 million cap hit when he just for retiring. So if both of those players retired this year, the Steelers would be on the hook for almost $30 million of what's being projected to be $180 million salary cap. They're talking right now it's going to be between 180 and 182. They don't know the exact numbers yet, but that's enormous. That in itself puts you at a deficit to try to rebuild and retool that team. Now you could sign contracts that would be loaded for later on. Signing bonuses now, they could restructure some stuff so guys get paid later on. They could sign people and try to guarantee some of the money in the second year. But it's going to be very difficult to navigate that cap. If I had to make a prediction, I'm going to say Ben Roethlisberger comes back. I don't think he wants to leave on the note that he left on. For some reason, he believes he can do better. And I think the Steelers would probably be better off if he did come back, in my opinion. So that's an interesting thing there. I mean, what do you think, Lance? What do you think the move for the Steelers should be right now? You're losing Pouncey. You're probably going to lose Villanueva, who's your left tackle. He's going to go into free agency. A lot of other guys are going to be leaving. Do you bring Big Ben back and take one more run at it with the talent that you have? Or do you get rid of Ben, save what could be $20 million because his full cap is $40 million right now if he plays. Yep. Save what could be $20 million and try to rebuild? You go into rebuilding time? What do you do?
Well, I believe that first things first, the quarterbacks that the Steelers have right now, they're still raw. I mean, Mason Rudolph, maybe a season or two away from being like the real starter. And of course, Dwayne Haskins still getting his reins back in the
Mm.
NFL because of what happened. And Dobbs, the third quarterback, is still young. He does have talent, but I guess with more seasoning, like one more season under the wings of Big Ben, he will be able to improve. So if Roethlisberger leaves now, then the Steelers will be in more shambles coming into 2021. So most likely he will be back. But the big contention is his salary. It would be better for the Steelers if they can restructure the salary, of course, lessen it so that with whatever money they can save, they can
Yeah.
upgrade the offensive line. They can repay Villanueva. They can repay any free agent that might want to come to the Steelers and make another push for the playoffs in 2021 again.
Yeah, well, Villanueva was not good last year, and I'm a fan of the guy. He's a former Army Ranger. He served in Afghanistan, I believe, 3 tours. He's a hell of a man, really, a far better man than I am, actually. But unfortunately, last year his play really tailed off. So for the amount of money that he probably want to come back, I think there's probably either someone on the roster or somewhere they can upgrade, maybe through the draft at left tackle. The quarterback is really the issue at this point. If Ben were to leave, I think it puts him in a situation where they would become big contenders to get to take a shot at Sam Darnold from the Jets. I think that's the move for them. Sam Darnold could probably be had for a second-round draft pick at this point. The Jets are obviously going to move off of him. They're going to draft somebody in that spot. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. That's what everybody thinks, that the Jets have a chance at a new quarterback. So why not take that opportunity, get a guy under a 5-year rookie deal, new coach, gets to rebuild with him, get something for Darnold. Darnold was a top 10 pick, and a lot of people think the guy still has a lot of potential. So if Pittsburgh could get a quarterback like Sam Darnold, second-round draft pick, you throw it out there, you bring him in, you create an open competition between him, Haskins, and Mason Rudolph in what could be a brand new offense under a brand new coordinator named Matt Canada. I think you can make some really interesting things happen there. I really do. I wouldn't mind Darnold. Darnold's a mobile guy, can move around a little bit. He's an athlete. Good arm on him, obviously. Hell of a talent. Has not lived up to that potential playing for the Jets. The argument could be made that he didn't live up to his potential because of the coaching he had, but there's also an argument that says he could have been better and he could have made the coaches better. So I don't know. But for me, if Pouncey leaves, if Roethlisberger leaves, it becomes very, very interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit about J.J. Watt. We got a comment out of here saying J.J. Watt should join the Pata. I think he's saying the Pats. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. He corrects himself here. That's from Florence. J.J. Watt should join the Pats. So J.J. Watt leaving the Texans is actually huge news. People had speculated that perhaps he could leave. I believe J.J. Watt, if I'm not mistaken, was a $17 million cap hit, Lance. So The Texans are in cap hell. They had no choice but to let him go. And the reality of it is J.J. Watt's not a $17 million player anymore. If memory serves me, I think he had 5 sacks last year, maybe 6, 5.5. And I don't think that J.J. Watt is going to be that $17 million guy. But let me ask you a question. What do you think J.J. Watt's worth is now going forward? And where do you think J.J. Watt ends up?
Okay, so you're right about him not worth 17 million anymore because there's always this dilemma for franchises. Do you pay the guy for his contributions before because there's already the prestige and glamour that he built, or do you pay him according to what he can produce eventually or what he is right now? So sometimes franchises are still stuck in that glamour stage wherein, for example, the Texans paid 17 million to JJ Watt, even though he's not worth 17 million anymore.
Yeah.
If I may speculate, given that his production in terms of sacks is about half of what he usually does, then his base salary annually should be half of the 17, around 8 or 9 million. I guess that's a fair value for JJ Watt. And where do I think he would end? I see like 3 potential destinations that would make sense for JJ Watt. Of course, First things first, he would ring chase because he's not getting any younger. So he would like to ring chase. How about Kansas City? Kansas City put him there because, as we mentioned, he's not as dominant a pass rusher anymore, but put him beside a Frank Clark or a Chris Jones. And he can; those 2 guys can attract attention, so he can have a free reign also and get some free hits. So that's the first team that I would like to see him go to, Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
Second, and his brother actually tweeted already a rock tweet doing like this. So why not Pittsburgh? I mean,
Bring it.
they had one of the better pass rushing defensive lines, and just boost it a bit with JJ Watt, who can have a lot of hits with Bud Dupree and the guys. So if ever Pittsburgh's offense would falter, at least you still have a strong defense that can give you opportunities to win games by close margins. So if the offense struggles, at least you have a strong defense that can neutralize your strong opponents on that side of the ball. And the third team that I'm seeing actually is the Green Bay Packers.
Wow.
The thing that I see about Green Bay, all of their weaknesses are on the defensive side of the ball. Predominantly the front
That's
seven,
actually a good
front
call,
four.
I think.
Yeah, so they already have a strong backfield with Alexander and the guys, so that's solid already. Their linebackers, their defensive line, still, the jury is up to them. We can still upgrade that. You can still refine. You can still retool, and a person like a JJ Watt can not only boost their pass rushing ability, because Green Bay, even though they were a playoff team, they were one of the worst teams in terms of sacks per game. I mean, they were at the bottom half. They had like just averaging 2 sacks per game when teams like the Arizona Cardinals were averaging 3 or more. So that's where they can have a major boost in terms of defense. It would also help Aaron Rodgers a lot, that he doesn't have to go on a shootout with all of the teams just to win games or pull off victories.
So I don't know if you saw one of the comments from the chat. By the way, guys, the show is live. We go broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube, and just Facebook and YouTube. And you can also download these shows from your favorite podcast platforms. But if you're watching live and you want to join in on the chat, we'll be happy to put your chats up on the screen and then comment on them. We got someone here from Florence. Florence is saying that he can go join the Tom Brady in the Bucs, which would be super interesting. You want a ring chase, that's the place to go. Let me just talk about some of the places that you talk about. I don't know if he's a fit in Kansas City, in my opinion, because Kansas City is going to be in a position where they have to really dedicate some money to the other side of the ball. And I know nobody thinks that's something that Kansas City would ever have to do, put money into the offense. But that offensive line needs to be worked on. Pittsburgh's going to be in cap hell. So if he's a $9 million asset, he's not something that Pittsburgh will be able to afford. But I love the Green Bay choice. I love the Green Bay idea. JJ Watt is from JJ, TJ, all of them. They're all from Wisconsin originally.
Yeah.
So they probably, most likely, grew up being Green Bay Packers fans. I don't know if that's true. I'm just assuming. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I'm a Pittsburgh fan. You grow up around a team, you become a fan of that team. I'll assume growing up he was a Green Bay fan. If he had the opportunity to go home, being who he is now, being the community leader that he is, it may be worth it for Green Bay to bring in a guy like him. Now, Green Bay doesn't normally make big splash plays like that. And if they're going to make a splash play, a guy like Aaron Rodgers is saying, go out and get me a stud wide receiver. So I got 2 of them to play with, and I could really set some records. But I really like that pick. I think for me, I was kind of on the same opinion of Florence, saying that it was going to be for sure Tampa. But that's actually a good pick. I would say right now, I would say Tampa Bay, or I would say Green Bay. I think he ends up in one of the bays. Let's see what happens. Well, that was the breaking news, and that was super interesting. Now, before we go too deep into anything, I want to let everybody know that our show today is sponsored by us. That's right. The people over at What's on Sports are sponsoring this show with our brand new addition to the family. It's called the $2 Sports Club, where you guys can join up and get all the content in the world that you've ever dreamed about sports for only $2. And here's a special bonus. We just made a deal with Michael Francis, who is a mafia boss. If you guys know who Michael Francis is, amazing guy. Used to be one of the most famous mafia bosses in the world today. Used to be one of the richest mafia bosses in the world today. He's been to prison. He's out. He knows all about the ins and outs of sports and how the mafia was intertangled with it. He'll be a special guest coming up later on in the month in the $2 Sports Club, along with all the other great content you can get there. Go over today and check out the $2 Sports Club at What's on Sports. And if you want to know how to get there quickly, there's a link in the description below. Now, before we go any further into the show, I want to talk about somebody who was actually a guy I followed and admired as I was growing up. Marty Schottenheimer, the NFL coaching legend, recently passed away. I believe he passed away 2 days ago. Marty Schottenheimer was one of a kind. I mean, really, you wrote a piece on Marty Schottenheimer for the website that's really fantastic, Lance. You did a really great job. If you guys want to read it, it's whatsonsports.com. Marty Schottenheimer was a true legend. He played a distinct style of football that people at the time called Marty ball. And he had a lot of influences on a lot of other coaches. And he really, really, really was the one thing that's the most important when you're a coach. Marty Schottenheimer was a winner, an absolute winner. What do you know about Marty Schottenheimer there, Lance?
So Marty Schottenheimer, apparently he passed away recently due to Alzheimer's disease. So it's very unfortunate that
it's a terrible
his
way
demise,
to go.
definitely. So his demise caused his memory to falter when he's one of the better coaches in terms of having memory, and also one of the better coaches to inspire in the sidelines. Just listen to any Marty Schottenheimer pep talk before the game. Who wouldn't be pumped up with that? So he won 200 games in the regular season throughout his 22 season career, Marty Schottenheimer. And of course, Marty ball is his live or die philosophy. So it basically boils down to three things. Number one, a strong running game. He always has that. Number two, a passing game that lessens errors. So he'd rather have those 6 or 7 yard passes instead of 15 or 20. And number three, a hyper aggressive defense. So even though he won a lot of games during the regular season, the biggest knock against him is, of course, he lost more playoff games than he won. He only won 5 out of 18 games in the postseason. But some of those games, you can argue that is not his fault. I mean, you can improve that record to some extent. But even though that's his postseason record, 200 wins is no fluke, John. I mean, not all coaches last that long. Especially that he coached multiple franchises, so he's always on the move. There's always adjustment, new personnel that he handles. So he has to adjust Marty ball to some extent to fit his personnel. And even despite the adjustments, getting 200 wins, and he only had 2 losing seasons in 22 years. So that's an astonishing achievement already. So
that is amazing.
By the time they review his credentials, I see no doubt that he deserves a bronze bust in Canton.
Yeah, listen, it's a little confusing to me as to why he's not been nominated yet. Now, you can point to the lack of success in the postseason, and that would be fine. But the reality of it is that some coaches are incredible in the regular season, and some coaches just don't do so well in the postseason. Marty's kind of ball was actually perfectly geared for postseason. He had a couple just terrible losses against Denver years ago that just really would have put the Cleveland Browns, believe it or not, in the Super Bowl. And those really are things that people look at that, man. People are loving you today, Lance. Great stats, Lance.
Hey, thank you.
Somebody likes you. You got a fan out there, buddy. Lance, by the way, is the sports nerd. He knows a little bit about everything. He's got all sorts of cool information. He'll just keep pumping him to you. Let's wrap up with Marty Schottenheimer by just saying, great coach. From everything I've read about him and everything I've heard about him, really a good man, really a solid guy. He's got a great coaching tree. Lance covers that in the article that he wrote over at What's on Sports. Go over and check it out whenever the podcast is over, and maybe you'll join the $2 club and you have a little fun while you're there as well. I want to jump into something else right now. Now, for those of you that know me out there, they call me the sports trader because I use back-tested historical analytics to actually trade sports like other people trade stocks. It's a brand new way of gambling. It's pretty cool. And we do it over at sportstradingsystems.com. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Instead, we're going to talk about a Super Bowl bet that went bad. Now, for those of you that watched the Super Bowl, if you were paying attention, because it happened really fast, there was something that happened in the game that the TV cameras saw for a second and then pulled away and didn't want us to see the rest of it. And what had happened was there was a streaker. There was a guy who dressed up wearing almost nothing. He was wearing like a woman's brassiere and like a G-string, and he ran across the field. Apparently, he was sponsored by a porn company, which I don't even know the name of yet, but I want to find out so I can look it up. But they were sponsored by a porn company, and he made a bet. There was a bet that was being taken by one of the online casinos that if there was a streaker, I believe the odds were 30-1, 40-1. What were the odds? 17-1? It was something crazy. Whatever it was. He put a $50,000 bet on that actual bet. $50,000 bet if there'll be a streaker, and then he was the streaker. And then he bragged about it to everybody saying, I put money on it. That's why I did it. And then something happened, Lance. What happened?
Okay, so what happened? Oh, so before we continue, so the name of the website is, the name of the entity that sponsored him is Vitali Uncensored. So we're just spelling out facts here. We're not promoting, what's the content of that website. But
do me a favor. Can you send that over to me in an instant message so I don't forget? For research.
Sure. Okay. Research. Yeah, for research, anatomical research, that is. Anyway, so continuing. So he placed a huge bet on himself that, prop bets, there will be a streaker in the Super Bowl. And I was amazed watching it on Game Pass when all of a sudden all of the players stopped and there's this guy in pink tank tops streaking across the screen. So there is a streaker, and his shorts was falling off a bit already as he passes through the screen. So here's what happened. Initially, he won the prop bet because the condition was met. There will be a streaker. So his
Hank, correct me if I'm wrong. It was 350,000. How much was it?
Yeah, he won 375,000 out of that bet.
375. Jesus Christ.
375. So he could have had a huge vacation somewhere else, be in a yacht or a cruise and be off for a week or so. Unfortunately, his biggest mistake, in my opinion, is that revealing that he bet on himself.
Oh,
because one of the dumbest things that you do is do a prop bet and then execute it yourself and then admitting that you do that. So here's what happened, John. So the betting company by which he placed his wager on, Bovada, so it's an offshore sports book. So they are currently investigating the money that this streaker, his name is Yuri Andrade, by the way, so kind of Latino, Yuri Andrade. So they're investigating, aside from the money that he plays, who else is involved in this fix. So Bovada now is investigating if there are other bets placed by other people that this Mr. Andrade might know of. So they're now, and if they reveal or they find out that all of these people are in the fix, then they won't pay those bets as well. They don't pay the wins. So aside from that, more legal problems might happen for Mr. Andrade down the road, because sports books, when it comes to money, they're really tight into it. Yeah, they'll really squeeze you with every cent that you have because of trying to take advantage of them.
Well, and good luck trying to get $50,000 back from an offshore sports book. Yeah. Like you have zero legal representation at this point. At least if you're using a sports book in the U.S. And I'm not saying whether you should use offshore or not, but I'm just saying the downside of gambling in an offshore sports book and putting $50,000 on an offshore sports book is that A, you gambled illegally, probably. I mean, most likely you gambled illegally. B, there's a paper trail now because you can't just send $50,000 in an envelope. And C, they can keep the money and say that you violated their terms and make up some bullshit, and you can't get it back. So that's got to be one of the dumbest gamblers of all times. I mean, this is a guy who really didn't do the research. Listen, he's got balls. He's got balls. I wouldn't run out in front of 100 million people or however many people were watching the Super Bowl and streak. But this guy would. This guy's out of his mind. That's crazy. That's crazy. Look, I again though, I got to give the guy props. I don't know. Could you do it? Could you be the guy who ran out there?
Well, just like the $1 Million Man always says, everybody has a price. Yeah. So given the right price, why not? But I wouldn't admit that I do it because, I lose everything that I won.
Yeah, well, that's the dumb part. Some people just can't seem to contain themselves. That's the problem with the world today. People are just, look what I did. Just shut up. You made yourself almost $500,000. Just shut the hell up. By the way, we got some more comments coming out there. Let's see what we got here. Someone liked you earlier. Where can we learn more about this $2 Sports Club? Sorry, I missed it. Okay, I talked about the $2 Sports Club earlier. The $2 Sports Club is a brand new thing that we've got going over at What's on Sports. You can go over there directly and look at it, but there's a link down in the description that we left for you guys. So if you guys want to check out the $2 Sports Club, you can check it out. Lots of great stuff over there. Lots of great content. It's only $2 to join. And you get, not only do you get the great content, but you get lots of great deals that we source for you from different sports books. From different sports companies. And we do cool videos. We've got interviews. We've got some gambling seminars inside the $2 Sports Club. And we've got special guests. We've got a lot of guys lined up right now. Our next guest is going to be Michael Franzese. He's a former mafia boss who you've probably seen on YouTube. He's super popular. He's going to be doing the interview inside the $2 Sports Club like you've never heard before. That's coming up a little bit later on this month. Check out the $2 Sports Club. Now, we obviously know that the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. And to me, one of the coolest things was watching them on the boat parade. I mean, I got to tell you, in the beginning, I was like, this is kind of silly. But watching how much fun these guys were having, watching how much they enjoyed themselves, and watching how drunk Tom Brady got. I don't know if you saw the video, but at one point, Tom Brady's actually being assisted he got off the boat, and somebody was kind of like almost holding him up straight so that he could make it back to the dressing room, which was really cool. It was nice to see them human that way. It was great to see them throw. At first, I see him throwing the Lombardi Trophy around, and the conservative nature of me pops out and says, "Well, I can't believe they're throwing that trophy around like that." And then the fun side of me comes out and goes, what the hell? If it falls in the ocean, if it falls in the bay, someone's going to go get it. So it was kind of cool to watch him. You throw it around, and I could tell Tom Brady was a little drunk at that time because that wasn't a great decision. But it was kind of awesome to see that. Now the question is, can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win back-to-back Super Bowls? Do they have a chance to go back? Now you're the sports nerd. I want to know what you think.
They have a strong chance, actually, of winning back-to-back Super Bowls, despite the fact that early odds for Super Bowl 56 are already out, and they are number 3, which I think is a disgrace. They're behind the Green Bay Packers, even though they have an overall roster that is better from offense, defense, bar none. So they do have a chance to repeat, but they have to re-sign key people if they are to win again as championships. So the 3 people, I think, in my opinion, that they have to prioritize in terms of free agency signing are Shaq Barrett, Lavonte David, and Chris Godwin. So I guess those are the 3 people that they must resign for them to have a strong chance of repeating.
Well, look, on defense, I agree with David. I agree with Shaq Barrett. On offense, Godwin is good, but they were saying that he's going to be wanting somewhere in the $15 to $20 million range. You still have to sign Gronkowski, who just this past year, I believe, got paid $9 million, and this year would have to come back probably thinking he deserves something near that, which he doesn't. He did not have a great regular season. He was decent. But look, I don't know how you're going to sign all these guys. That's the biggest problem with winning the Super Bowl. When you win the Super Bowl and you come to something like this, and you got a guy like Shaq Barrett, who led the NFL in sacks last year, was very good this year, was part of a defense that just destroyed Patrick Mahomes, plays a position that everybody wants, which is rush, outside edge. That's going to be a tough guy to sign. I think Shaq Barrett's gone. And you haven't talked about Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette's also a free agent. So there's some super, super huge guys that you lose. If you lose Fournette and Godwin on the offensive side, you lose all the depth that you had. Antonio Brown's also a free agent. So you've only got Mike Evans. So you might want to come back, but you also might think to yourself, look, I just want a Super Bowl. I've got the ring. This is all I really ever wanted in my life. I don't need another one. I really need money. Like for the rest of my life, I can stay here and make $10 million, which is a lot, or I can go somewhere else and make $16 million a year. Well, look, if it's a 3-year contract, you're talking about the difference between $18 to $20 million. It's hard to pass that up, especially at some of these guys are 26 years old, 27 years old. It's really hard to pass that up. And as much as I would always want to keep the players that I love in town, I respect the fact that it's a business and you got to go somewhere else. So to me, it's all going to come down to money for the Buccaneers. And I know they have some cap room, and I know they got a quarterback who's willing to rework his deal and make room for people. But you just named and David, listen, he was a star. He covered Kelce throughout that Super Bowl and did a great job of shutting him down. Sideline to sideline linebacker, along with the Devin White. Those guys were fantastic together. If you lose those 2 pieces on the defense and you lose a couple pieces on offense, that's not an all-star team anymore. It just isn't. Now, you can go back and say, hey, we're going to lose Shaq Barrett, but we'll fill in with J.J. Watt. It's not the same guy. Shaq Barrett is explosive off the edge, Something about that guy just gets around the corner like a bat out of hell. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be real. In my opinion, it's going to be extremely tough for the Buccaneers to rebuild that team and come back. Now, there were 2 teams in the Super Bowl, though. And we talked about the Buccaneers, and I think it's going to be difficult. You don't think it's going to be that easy. But let's talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs have got a lot going on. Now, obviously, their core superstars come back. Kelsey comes back. Mahomes isn't going anywhere for 10 years. Tyreek Hill signed to come back. But what about the Chiefs? What do you think the Chiefs need to do to actually get a little better?
Well, it's obvious during the Super Bowl 55 that their priority must 100% absolutely positively be the offensive line. That's where it stems from them. All of their problems, their concerns during Super Bowl 55 stem from the fact that they had a patchwork O-line, that they had to move people around the line just to be able to put up bad protection for Patrick Mahomes. It's not really good. The Buccaneers had 3 sacks, but they could have had 7 or 8 easily, if not for Mahomes avoiding the rush. But anyway, so here's the contention for the Chiefs O-line, I guess. So they have been playing the entire season with the patchwork offensive line because Mitchell Schwartz, one of their starters, was out for the majority of the regular season. And of course, Laurent Duvernay opted to stay in Canada because apparently he's a physician and he helped with the COVID efforts there in Canada. So in some ways, there's consolation. There's reason to believe that the Chiefs lost because, well, 2 of their starters were not in Super Bowl 55. And of course, the biggest absence of them all is Eric Fisher. But if there's any priority for the Chiefs going into offseason and even the draft, no doubt it would be the offensive line. And they have to decide on Sammy Watkins as well, because it was also evident during Super Bowl 55 that Tyreek Hill would also need somebody else to stretch the field with him. I mean, Nicole Hardman can do it, but at least with the Sammy Watkins, you got 3 people. So that can somehow fool the D-backs of the Buccaneers. So that could open some opportunities for Hill downfield. However, he did not have that luxury come Super Bowl 55. So they might be in the lookout as well for another wide receiver just to release some burden off Hill, just catching all of the deep throws and loosening the defense around him because he gets double teamed most of the way.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs have a lot more problems than people are saying they do. They were able to hide their problems on the back end of the defense. That secondary is not great. Their linebackers are average at best. They were able to hide that by being an offense that can score very quickly like that. Now, when you look at having to fill in an offensive line, maybe Fisher comes back, but you obviously need some depth on that offensive line, and you need to be able to do it quickly. So I don't know, man. I think the Chiefs. I'm going to say right now, I'm going to predict the Chiefs. Excuse me. The Chiefs struggle to actually come back next year and make the Super Bowl. A lot of teams are going to game plan to beat the Chiefs. A lot of teams are going to build their rosters to build the Chiefs. A lot of teams inside their division are going to be more ready to beat the Chiefs next year. San Diego is going to be a much better team next year. That's not a cakewalk for the Chiefs. The Raiders are obviously going to go out and do what the Raiders do, which is spend a bunch of money and try to bring a bunch of new people in. So I don't think – I'm going to say right now the Chiefs are not going to make the Super Bowl next year. As a matter of fact, the Chiefs will maybe make the playoffs, and they'll be eliminated early in the playoffs. The magic of Patrick Mahomes is going to start being a little more normal for people. People are going to be like, well, Patrick Mahomes is good, but Patrick Mahomes can't do things all by himself. In fact, in the NFL, no one can. And that's really what we learned. We learned that whether it's Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, you can't do it by yourself. Tom Brady did not win a Super Bowl by himself. I understand that the narrative right now is that Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl. Yay! He's the greatest champion of all time. Listen, Tom Brady has been on some of the greatest teams of all time. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team was loaded from the get-go. That's why Brady went there. It wasn't because of the warm weather. He went there because the team was loaded, and he leveraged his other opportunities in other places to get himself that really, really good job. And bravo, great move. That you're the greatest of all time. That's what you should do. You should leverage yourself into a position that's got a really good team. Peyton Manning did it when he went to Denver. Denver was loaded at offensive weapons. So Peyton Manning didn't go to Denver by accident. And Peyton Manning had a bad neck and knew that his arm wasn't what it used to be. And he knew he'd play 8 games a year in Denver where the air's a little bit lighter and the ball travels better. So listen, I think going back to Kansas City, I believe Kansas City is going to be in some real trouble because they're going to have to pay some of these guys. And listen, it's going to be hard to keep that talent around Patrick Mahomes. Now, we're talking about quarterbacks, and I have this thing about quarterbacks. I'm a believer that some quarterbacks really are important to their team. I'm also a believer that some of them are super divas. I've also got this thing, where there are certain guys that really just drive me crazy, Lance. And you've heard me mention them before. Like, for example, LeBron James. LeBron James should never speak in public, in my opinion. Everything he says sounds ignorant. Everything he says comes from a place of privilege. Since the day LeBron James graduated high school, he has been rich. In fact, we're not even sure that when he was in high school that he wasn't already getting paid by Nike or somebody. So LeBron James talks about a rough childhood, which he very well could have had. But from 18 years old and up, he is so detached from reality that most of the things he says to me just don't resonate with me. He just comes off to me like a privileged, spoiled child. And there's another guy in a different sport that has recently caught my attention this year and has been acting the exact same way. His name is Russell Wilson. And this guy's been driving me crazy all year. Somebody got in Russell Wilson's ear before the year and told him that you need to be this kind of person. You need to be a more outspoken, an electric personality, and that's just not Russell Wilson. I tried to listen to his podcast one day. It was painful how fake it is. I've seen him talk. I've seen him do like little promo videos. It's just painful to me how fake it all is. It's just so contrived and so constructed, and so is this bullshit. Tell me what's happening in Seattle with Russell Wilson.
Okay, so with older athletes, older quarterbacks, that is, they always try to find ways to remain relevant. And I guess that's where Russell Wilson is right now. You have a Josh Allen, you have the Baker Mayfields, you have the Patrick Mahomes. So they still have a lot of years left. So in the perception of Russell Wilson, hey, I'm still one of the good quarterbacks in the league. Why are people forgetting about me? So maybe that's the time he was able to come up with the Let Russ Cook slogan.
Yeah.
And of course, that Kobe Bryant tribute video that much to our dislike, it's still up in the internet. So
insulting.
Russell Wilson publicly stated, and he doesn't normally do this, he publicly stated that he basically is fed up getting sacked a lot. And he has actually the numbers to back it up, because since 2017, Russell Wilson is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL with 188. Deshaun Watson is second with 173. And then Russell Wilson also has been sacked 100 more times than any other quarterback since he entered the league in 2012. So that's 441. So there are numbers to back up his claim that he indeed is getting sacked a lot. But as a true leader of your squad, you don't say it publicly. That's why you have team meetings. That's why you have player meetings. You can go to Pete Carroll. You can go to the offensive line coach. You can go to the general manager privately and say your sentiments without going to the public. So
exactly. This is bad leadership.
This is a bold move. This is essentially is like it's Russell Wilson against the Seahawks right now, because on one end it's him, and on the other end it's the rest of the team, because he's like throwing everybody else under the bus already with what he's saying.
I just want to interject. I don't think it's Russell Wilson against the Seahawks. I think it's Russell Wilson against himself. Russell Wilson is having an internal culture war where he feels that he needs to get attention at all times. Something happened along the way and somebody said, Russell, you're not getting enough attention. Or maybe he felt like he wasn't getting enough attention. He's been in the news all year this year about some other bullshit, whether it's him telling the world that he spends $1 million a year taking care of his body and talks about I think it's called Team 3, which is like his private chef, his body man, his personal trainer. Like, Another person. Do you understand how unrelatable you are to the rest of us? Like, what do you think? What do you think? The rest of us here that you got a chef and somebody that wakes you up in the morning and stretches you out, and we're all like, oh wow, we're so intrigued by this. No, we think you're a dick. Most of the people in America right now are struggling to pay their bills. Most of your fans are struggling to pay their bills. Most of the people in the country right now are working through this pandemic. There's a 10% or an 8% unemployment rate, and you're out there bragging about how you spend $1 million a year on your body. You're so unaware of what's happening in the world. And now you see all these quarterback controversies going on of like, well, geez, Deshaun Watson sure is getting a lot of attention because he wants to get traded. So Russell comes out and says the stupidest fucking thing that he could possibly say and starts complaining about his offensive line. Like, what are you doing? These are the guys you go to war with every Sunday. These are the guys you work out with all year long. These are supposed to be your brothers. These are supposed to be your teammates. If you don't get traded, which you're not going to because you have a $40 million cap hit if they get rid of you, if you're not going to get traded, you got to go back and look these guys in the face. You got to go back and stare these guys in the eyes and say, hey, listen, I'm tired of getting sacked. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to look down at you because you're a fucking midget. And they're going to say, listen, if you didn't scramble and get outside the tackle box all the time, you probably wouldn't get sacked so much. That's what's going to happen. So I don't know what the hell he's thinking. And I apologize because I just don't like Russell Wilson. Something about this guy bothers the shit out of me.
Well, there's just some people that really ticks you off. And just to add to Russell Wilson, I guess what will happen when he returns to camp is like, what happened to Paul Crew during the third quarter of that game against the guards, wherein the offensive line just let the guards pass through and sack him 3 straight times. So I guess that might happen. And reading between the lines of what Russell Wilson is also saying, I guess he's playing through the emotions of the Seahawks fans right now, the 12-man, so to speak. Because if you dig deeper with his statements, I guess what he's trying to say is, I'm scared with the rest of my division. Because let's face it, Matthew Stafford now with the Rams, so Sean McVay can run his offense finally the way he wants it to be. So it's like bombs all over downtown. And you have an up-and-coming team like the Cardinals, and then the 49ers who will have their full power.
Yeah, so I get it. It's a tough division.
But I guess that's how he's playing this.
Hang on. You're saying that maybe he's talking to the Seahawks fans. What's he saying? Your franchise, your team, the people that you love, the team you come out and support and root, one of the best fan bases in the NFL. He's saying, guess what? They haven't protected your quarterback. He's trying to get them on his side. These are normal people. Like, what are you talking about? You're making $40 million this year. I'm sorry you got hit a little too much. Stay inside the pocket. What else can I say?
That's a problem for Russell Wilson, staying inside the pocket because he's not one of the taller quarterbacks. So he really has to move around the pocket.
So, Lance, I want to apologize to everybody out there really quick. For some reason, the chat got disconnected for a second ago. That's what I was trying to do on my phone. I was trying to get the chat back up. So I do have the chat back up. We have a couple comments from the peanut gallery. If he doesn't want to get hit too much, he should have played football, laugh out loud, be a TikToker or something. There's money in TikTok. I don't know if there's $40 million, but there is some money in TikTok.
We can ask Juju about that.
Here's another one. Is there something you could say positive about LeBron? Like what do you admire about LeBron? Listen, you want to talk about LeBron James? LeBron James is quite possibly the greatest basketball player of all time. As a basketball player. I mean, and for me, I can separate the athlete from the man because I can admire you as a basketball player. I have a tremendous amount of admiration about LeBron James. What's the best thing I could say about him? LeBron James actually made me rich. So years ago, I owned a sports club sports bar in Hollywood, Florida called Whiskey Tango. And you could look it up. I actually ran a promotion that said every time the Heat lose, LeBron had just signed. Every time the Heat lose, we'll pay your entire tab. And LeBron James and the Heat started off. I think they lost 7 out of their first 11 or something like that. Anyway, we were on national television. We were on ESPN, Good Morning America, the NBA channel. Business was good. Business blew up through the moon. Tons of publicity, tons of extra free money, all because LeBron James was there. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for LeBron James as a player. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for Russell Wilson as a player. Obviously, these guys are elite, next-level athletes. Russell Wilson in particular, LeBron James was a prodigy from the time he was a little kid. Like he was going to be the number 1 draft pick in the NBA when he was 12. People knew that. Russell Wilson, no one thought he was going to make it. So I have even more admiration for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was a 4th round draft choice that people laughed at and said he was too short to play quarterback. But he made it. And he didn't just make the team. He became the starter. He became the starter in Seattle for the time that he played there as a rookie. So I got a tremendous amount of admiration for these guys as athletes. I don't have admiration for them as human beings because, quite frankly, they sound like they suck. All right. Over on What's on Sports, we have a great little section that's called the Mailbag. You guys can send in your questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer these questions. I have not looked at these questions. I am in no way an expert on some of these subjects. I just like to give my opinion, and I'm going to put them on the screen. Lance is going to ask the question, and I will answer it. Here we go.
Okay, so first question comes from Todd from Fort Myers, Florida. Hello, Todd, if you're watching. Will their victory in Super Bowl 55 make Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles the top head coaching candidates?
Well, I believe all head coaching vacancies are filled right now, so there's no opportunity for them right now. Now, going into next year, look, Todd Bowles has already been a head coach, and he failed at it. It was not a good showing. Some guys are better off being coordinators. Maybe he'll get another shot at it. I don't know. I don't think it's happening anytime in the near future. Leftwich and Bowles are both subject to the same thing that Eric Bieniemy is subject to, and that's when you have that much talent. I don't believe it's looked upon by people who run NFL teams as an accomplishment. So you look at Byron Leftwich. Byron Leftwich had an All-Pro Hall of Fame quarterback. Byron Leftwich had a Hall of Fame tight end. Byron Leftwich had two tight ends behind him, actually, that were very good. One got hurt. Byron Leftwich had 2 Pro Bowl caliber running backs. Byron Leftwich had 3 Pro Bowl caliber wide receivers, one of which is destined to the Hall of Fame. And then they had the other little guy, the guy who thinks he's the fastest guy in the NFL, as their 4th wide receiver. I forget his name now.
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller. Thank you, sports nerd. Scotty Miller. That's why you're here, because I can never remember his name. And Scotty Miller is their 4th wide receiver. So that team was loaded. So when you look at Byron Leftwich, I think he did a great job this year. That offense was not working, and they figured it out, and they made it work. And that's a good coach. Someone that makes adjustments as the season goes on. It isn't like bullheaded and sticks to what he thinks he knows, but continues to make changes. So for me, that's amazing that he was able to do that. That's fantastic. Is he head coaching material? I don't know that yet. Now, I will say this. Byron Leftwich was a hell of a leader as a quarterback. He wasn't a great quarterback, but he's a hell of a leader. I'll never forget, people who don't remember this, Byron Leftwich played in the MAC. His senior season, he broke his leg in the championship game for the MAC, and his teammates carried him from play to play as he went on like an 80-yard drive. He would throw, make a completion. His offensive line would pick him up over their shoulders and limp him up, and he would somehow get behind center again, and they would snap the ball to him again, and he would make another play. It was one of the most courageous things you'll ever see. So when you see something like that, the guy's a leader. So I think he may get an opportunity. If the team becomes a little less talented and stays as good as they were last year, I think his opportunities will come to him. We have a comment. Let me see what it is. It is Lance is the NFL Wikipedia. Man, they love you in the chat today, Lance.
Yeah, maybe even better.
They're loving you in the chat. All right, let's go to our next question.
Okay, next question comes from Trent from New England. So hello, Trent. Where will you place Gronk in your all-time tight ends list?
It's always tough for me because everybody plays inside of a different generation. Let me just narrow it down to the last 20 years. I think Rob Gronkowski is the greatest tight end to play football in the last 20 years. He very well could be the greatest tight end to play of all time. Now, it's hard to compare him against somebody like an Ozzie Newsome or a Kellen Winslow because they played in a completely different generation. How would those guys play today? How would those guys reshape their bodies, reshape their games, reshape the way that they were used at the time to be a little more cohesive with what's going on in today's football? I don't know. I can't answer that question. So it's very difficult. It's the Michael Jordan LeBron question all over again. Michael Jordan played in an era where you could elbow somebody in the forehead and it was fine. So it's a completely different generation, and it's hard to compare those things. I will say that if you want to talk about, your recent greatest tight ends, your Shannon Sharps, your Tony Gonzalez, your Kelsey, I actually forgot his name. He used to play for San Diego. I'm sure you know his name. Oh,
Antonio
Gates.
Gates. Yeah.
Antonio Gates. I'm sorry. I'll just ask you. I'll just shout things out and you'll know what it is. Compared to all of them, he's better than all of them. So in my opinion, Rob Gronkowski is the greatest tight end that maybe we've ever seen play the game. He can do everything. He's a decent blocker. You can line him up outside. He used to be a Steeler killer. I would watch Steeler games against the Patriots. They would line him up outside, and as soon as I saw him out there, I'm like, oh, we're dead. We got no matchup for this guy, and it would just be a nightmare. So Rob Gronkowski is, in my opinion, the greatest tight end of all time. Where do you rank him?
Well, based on your timeline, I would have to put him like on the top as well, because in terms of credentials, Gates does have a lot of yardage, a lot of pass catches as well.
Yeah,
but
he was very good.
He was really good. He was awesome. But unfortunately, San Diego couldn't get over the hump. And Gronkowski also, for much to his credit, always comes up big in the biggest of games, just like what we saw in Super Bowl 55. Yeah, so
100%.
he could have like a pedestrian regular season. I mean, it happened also in New England, even with the late Aaron Hernandez before. It happened also there. So he could have like a pedestrian regular season, and then come playoff time, he's like a notch higher. So usually you describe greatness that way. Do you perform in the biggest of stages when the pressure is on? And
good point.
Without a doubt, Rob Gronkowski is one of the better performers at tight end of all time.
Good point. Gronk's number one for both of us. Let's do our last question.
Okay, so this is from Hannah of Chicago. After what happened in Super Bowl, the latest Super Bowl that is improving the offensive line the Chiefs' priority this offseason?
Okay, that's a great question, Hannah. And I know a lot of people were freaking out saying that that's got to be the top priority. I think that you have to look at it from a couple different angles. And first of all, the Chiefs got put in a bad situation by having to rely on their depth. So, Eric Fisher wasn't someone that was supposed to get hurt. If Eric Fisher doesn't get hurt, you don't have to move your right guard to left tackle, and you don't have to insert Wisniewski. And you don't have this problem on your left side where you're just getting crushed no matter who lines up over there. Kansas City's problems weren't just physical either. It wasn't just I'm lining up on you man on man and I can't block you. A lot of it was scheme related. If you go back and look at the film, there's an all 22 film you can look at. You can see that Tampa Bay ran a lot of really unique stunts and a lot of unique twists in the front. And when offensive lines don't work together for a really long time, they don't have that chemistry. So they don't know who to hand off to. Like, is the guy's coming across my face? Am I blocking him? Is he your guy? So these guys just didn't have the time to get that together. Now, there's an argument that can be said that, yes, they need to improve their offensive line from a depth standpoint. So they're going to get the Dr. Corona back. Eric Fisher's going to come back. That offensive line will go back to being the way it was. But I think that every team in the NFL is constantly looking for depth pieces in the offensive line. Kansas City does not have great draft choices coming up. They've got draft choices. They just draft late. This is a deep NFL draft for offensive tackles and a deep offensive draft for interior linemen, especially at the center position. So Kansas City could make some moves. They should make some moves and draft some guys and definitely try to pick up some ancillary pieces. What do you think? Number one priority?
Okay, so definitely number one priority, but just like I mentioned earlier, I think that they still need one more wide receiver to open up the field for Tyreek Hill, because the Buccaneers just were able to game them in Super Bowl 55. So cancel Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs' offense will sputter. That's why they were able to allow Travis Kelce to catch like 10, 11-yard passes from Mahomes, because they'd rather give that rather than a 20, 30-yard pass downfield. Yeah. So they would need somebody else to open the field for Tyreek Hill. But the biggest concern for the Chiefs right now, actually, is that they are still $17 million over the cap.
Yeah.
So that's a bad recipe for trying to improve your roster. So you would have to have some healthy cuts from your roster to be able to improve the parts of your offense or parts of your team that you would like to boost. So the offensive line, I guess, will be more stable once Duvernay and once Schwartz and once Fisher comes back.
Yeah, I agree.
But and also the benefit of having an off season like a training camp, I guess that would help them also. But the target is on their backs now because even though they get those people back, they all of the other teams, the 30 teams in the NFL, have seen how the Buccaneers did it. So they just have to confuse that front 5 or 6, so that Mahomes and all of those guys wouldn't know where the pressure was coming. And it was that easy actually to game against Kansas City Chiefs. So other teams would copy that though.
Kansas City got lucky this year. Their schedule was not strong. Most of the teams they played didn't have the ability to just rush 4 guys and sit everybody else back. The Raiders did it with a lot of success. Nobody else was able to do it and get pressure on Mahomes. If they would have played more teams like the Steelers or things like that, they would have had those problems. If you remember the second half of the Kansas City-Tampa Bay game, they had those problems. Todd Bowles just played coached a horrendous first half against them and let Tyreek Hill pretty much beat him by himself in the first half. But if it wasn't for that, Tampa Bay would have actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs. People forget those things. People just look at the record and they don't look at the games. I watched a lot of Kansas City games this year. Kansas City was in trouble in a lot of those games and was somehow able to miraculously come back. I think that team's going to be in a lot of trouble next year, and we're going to hear a lot of people saying that Patrick Mahomes is not what he used to be. My name is John Tedora. I am the sports trader. On my side over there, that's Lance Fernandez. He is the sports nerd. This has been the What's on Sports podcast. Download us on your favorite platforms. We're out of here.